All right, so we're going to create a cumulative opportunity report. All right, so the way that we're going to do that, I'm going to go over to the reports. You can see I already created some of these just so that if I get stuck here, I can open them up on another screen and then pretend that I knew what I was doing. But if I create a new report here, I'm going to create one of type opportunity. All right. And keep in mind too, these steps that we're going to follow here, even if you're not doing this in a playground and you're not using our test records that we created, you could in theory do this in your own production org or any kind of demo org that you have. As long as you have opportunities that have amounts and different close dates, throughout a year, this should work perfectly fine. All right. But in any case, with our test records, what I'm going to do is first thing, I'm going to go over here to our filters. I'm going to change this close date from current fiscal quarter, and I'm going to change this to all time. And then on the filters, I'm going to add another one here for name. And we're going to say the opportunity name starts with test op. All right. And at a minimum, that should give us all of our test records that got created. Now, just after the call, if you want to kind of look back and you can see the amounts that got added for each of them, they're all pretty close to each other, but they're all different, right? And if you look at that script that we created, you can see how that was done, right? We started as like 100,000 as a base, and then we added, I think it's like 10,000 times a random number or something like that. But in any case, it gives us some realistic, semi-realistic looking data to work with. All right, so what we're going to do, let's get the basic part of this down where we're just looking at the amount totals per month. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to our outline here. And the first thing I want to do is group this by close date. And then I want to get rid of all of these fields. So I'm going to hit the columns here. I'm going to say remove all columns. And the only column that I want to add here is the amount. Okay, and then we can clean this up a little bit. And we're going to get rid of row counts, detail rows, and our close date, I'm going to group this by calendar month. Okay, so at its very basic here, and actually, you know what? Because we have 2 years, and we're going to use the other year worth of data for the next report that we're going to do. But because we have 2 years worth of data, I'm also going to go back in here, and for the close date, I am going to say this. I'm going to say this fiscal year or calendar year. So current calendar year as our close date filter, because I just want to show this year's worth of data. All right. So now if we run that, that's what we've got. We have our January through, well, I would assume January through December, but I guess we don't have a December here. What would that be? Why don't we have a December? It's going to bother me here. Current calendar year, January to January. Search with test up. Yeah, okay. Well, we'll deal without it. All right. All right. So if we just as we kind of test here, I'm also going to throw in a chart. So we're going to click that chart icon, and I'm going to add in, I'm going to make this a column chart, and we'll leave it at that. So I think that that looks pretty good. So we can see now, from January through November. Again, I don't know why there's not a December here, but you can see our, our opportunity amounts by month. Now let me pause there. Does anybody have any questions getting to this point here? As far as creating a new opportunity report, we're grouping by close date. We have our sum of amount as our column here. I'll go to the edit screen so we can kind of see from here. But we have our amount. We're grouping by close date. And the only filters that we have here is current calendar year, and the opportunity name starts with test op. All right. So what we're going to do then is, or actually, let me pause. Any questions there before I move on? It's a good chance for me to check if anybody's in the waiting room. There we go. Okay. All right. So the next thing that we want to do then is we want to be able to start adding up that cumulative, from every month we want to have that cumulative value. So the way that I like to do this, I'm going to go to the outline, and we're going to add in a summary formula. All right. And where I mentioned that we're going to use a function that not a lot of folks, use on a daily basis, it is called, if you go to the functions tab here, you can see that there's a function called previous group val. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that, and I'm just going to click insert over here onto the right. Now, before we get into the details here, let's just put a name here. So we'll just call this, what do we want to call this? Well, next challenge is spelling cumulative the first try. Cumulative. I think I got that right. Okay, so cumulative amount. All right, and we'll make this of type currency. And now we get into the formula. All right, so basically what this is, it's asking for three things. It's going to know what field are we trying to grab the previous value of, where are we going to get it, and then how many previous how many previous things do we want to go back to get that value? All right. So just to fill this out here, what we're going to do is you're going to double click on that summary field and just delete it. And then start typing in the word amount. Now, this is actually pretty important. If you try to, a lot of times if I try to go in here and I'm just like, okay, I know what it is. Like I'm just going to type in amount, sum, and I think that's the right thing. Sometimes that's not right? And you might actually miss, the spelling, or you might miss how they want their colons or anything like that. So basically what I do is when I start typing, I always make it a point that before I assume that I've gotten the right thing, I actually click on it. And then Salesforce does the rest for you. It'll actually put the right capitalization, put the right underscores, all that stuff. So for the summary field, we're going to put amount. For the grouping value, we're going to double click on that. And in this case, we want to group by close date. Now, if you've ever typed in close date in anywhere else in Salesforce, you might think that it is just close date and that's it. But actually, if you type close date and click on it, you'll see that they put an underscore. I don't know why they put an underscore, but that's what they do. All right. Now, just for testing purposes, for this increment, we're just going to put a 1. Okay, so all we're going to do in this isn't actually the cumulative amount that we want, but this is just a test to make sure that this formula is working. We're just going to put a 1 there. And then the final step, if you go over to your display, you got to make sure that you actually group by specific groups here, and then select that close date. And with that, if you click apply, that'll take you back into your report. Now, just based on what we did there, you could already see how this formula is working. Right. So for January, there's no previous value. So that's blank. When we look at February, though, we can see the February value, but then in that cumulative amount, it's grabbing the value from the previous month. So that's got the 114. And now if we go to March, you can see March's current value, but that now it's grabbing the previous value, which is February, and it's got, 113. All right. So all we did right there is grab the previous value from whatever came, the last grouping value from before. Now, just to get a little bit of experience on how this formula works, you can only imagine then. And if we go back in here and just say we don't want the previous value, let's grab 2 values behind. So if we just change an increment to a 2 and apply and look at this, well, January doesn't have 2 behind, so that's blank. February doesn't have 2 behind, so that's blank. But when we get to March, you can see March's value, but then it's showing 114,760, which if you go back 2 groupings, you can see that that's the January value. All right. So let me pause right there. That previous group value formula, any questions on how that works? So what we're doing here is we want to grab the sum of the amount from the closed group or the close date grouping that we have, and we want to go back 2 values to grab 2 behind. All right.
Bill, I have a question.
Sure.
Will you be able to do it cumulatively so that it adds as it goes? Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's what we're going to do. But before we got to that cumulative, I wanted to make sure people understood just a piece of it, and then we'll add the other pieces that we need here. All right. Great question.
Sorry.
All right. So what we're going to do then is let's talk about the cumulative piece. Well, if we change this back to a 1, so we want the previous value, just 1 value behind. The next thing that we want to do is let's try to add this to the current value. So instead of just showing the value from the previous one, let's get the value from the previous one and add it to the current row. So the way that we're going to do that, the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to put a space here first. And the reason I do that is if I want the amount and I start typing, I don't get that cool Salesforce pop-up here. So if I put a space there first and then go back, if I start typing amount, I'll get that nice pop-up. I'll click on that, and then we're just going to add a plus. So we're going to say the amount sum plus whatever the previous value is. For right now, that's what we're going to consider our cumulative amount. And if I hit OK, now when we look at this, of course, January is blank because there's no previous value. But when we look now at February, and I have my TI-85 here, if I'm going to do the math here, but if I'm assuming that 114,760 plus 113,284 is going to give us that 228,044. Right, and I bet you that if you do the math here for any one of these rows, this cumulative amount is going to be the current row plus whatever that previous value was. Now, that's okay if the formula that you want is current month plus last month, but what we said is we want cumulative amount. We want something that's going to keep adding up. Now, if somebody knows a slicker way to do this, I am all ears, but the only way that I know how to do this is to go in here, and we're going to say, we're going to change this up. Now, I'm going to do this pretty fast, but we'll kind of slow down if anybody has any questions. But essentially what we want to do is we're going to say that, first of all, I'm going to let whoever in who joined. There we go. All right, so we're going to say it's going to be the sum of the amount plus whatever that previous group value was. And then I'm going to actually go and I'm going to add another plus, and I'm going to add one more here. So we'll put in close date 2 or 2 behind. So now we're going to say it's the current row plus the 1 behind plus 1 more behind that. All right. Now, if I hit apply, let's see how this looks here. So if I were to run this now, you can see that for March here, it's not only giving you March, but it's giving you, March plus February plus January. So now we've got 3. All right. And again, if you follow through here, you'll see that each of these is just giving you 3 behind. Now, that is, that's really not what we want here, right? Because when we think of cumulative in January, there really should be a value there. It should be January's value, and February should be February plus January. So there's got to be something else that we have to do to these formulas before we go and do the entire year. All right. So what we need to do, if basically what's happening is Salesforce is looking at that formula that we have, trying to say for January, okay, it's the current amount plus 1 behind plus 2 behind, and it doesn't see those 1 and 2 behind, so it kind of breaks the formula, right? So what we actually need to do is we need to put a protection in here that if it's a null value, it doesn't break. All right. So the way that we do that, and again, I'm going to do this kind of fast. I'll make sure that I post this in the quick doc, but we're actually going to put an if statement here. So I'm going to copy what we have already, and I'm going to say if this previous group value is greater than 0, then I want to use that previous value. But if it's not, then I just want to use a 0. All right. Now, if you've never written an if statement before, that might just like blow your head up a little bit. But basically, all we're saying is it's the same formula that we had for previous group value, but we're going to say if that value is greater than 0, use it. So we just paste that same exact formula. And then the final thing is to say if it's not greater than 0, what value do we want to use? And that's going to be a 0. Okay. So let me pause there. Any questions on that if statement part of it? All right. So if we use that as our logic now, I'm going to copy that again, and we'll paste that in there. And now we'll set these to 2s, just like we had before. So now I would expect that when we save this, January and February should both now give me values. And you can see that here. So January is just giving me January. February is giving me February plus January. And now March and so on, it's just, it's going to give 3 months behind. So now we can take this exact same model and now we can extend it for the entire year. All right. So if I go back into this report or to this formula here, I'm going to, and I'm sure there's a bunch of different ways to do this that are probably cleaner, and there's probably tools that help you out with this and everything. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit enter a few times and just keep copying and pasting all the way down. All right. And then I'm going to go back up and just start updating these values. So we have 1 and 1, 2 and 2, and now I'm just going to keep going through here and not putting 32, but putting a 3 and 4 and so on. Now, as I update mine on my side with all the different months, does anybody have any questions that I can answer about this formula and why we have to do it this way, or if you're getting an error, if you got stuck? Any questions? Okay, now the question is, how many did I paste the right amount? No, I'm off by 1. Okay, so we're going to, whoop, I didn't want to do that. Put 11 here. Okay, and then the last one will be the 12. And you'll notice that I think Salesforce only lets you go, this increment can only go back 12. So if you want to do the similar report where it's like cumulative increase, every day for the span of a month with 31 days, I don't think this model is going to work. I think that the maximum value you could put here is a 12. But in any case, let me just do a quick check here. So 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the base one. Okay, so I'm going to click apply. And now if we run this report, you can now see that we have January, February's, February plus January, and so on until we get to the bottom. And we have our cumulative total of $1.2 million. All right, now The other thing that we can do now is, because we have the amounts here on our graph, we can also click into this gear icon. And if I wanted to add a measure, I should be able to add cumulative, and I can plot that as a line chart. And while it's somewhat ugly just because of the fact that, well, you know what we can do? We can plot it on a second axis. So it'd be slightly less ugly. But you get the idea, right? So now we have our totals for each individual month, and then we can actually see that cumulative total as a line with this axis over here on the right side. So let me take a pause. Any questions on that? Anybody get stuck as far as building out that kind of cumulative formula? All right, so I'll check. Let's see. Question was, will the recording be available? Yes, I will definitely share the recording after the fact. Even though I missed the introduction, I'm gonna have to re-record it and then tack it on at the beginning. All right, so that is our cumulative total report. So I think the next one that I want to show very quickly would be a year-over-year report. All right, so essentially you have 2 years worth of data, and now we want to keep track of, how do we do January of last year versus January of this year, or, and so on. So one final open up for questions before I move over there. But any final questions on this? I'm going to save this real quick. Cumulative report. Live.
Can you copy and paste, Bill, your formula into the chat?
Sure. Yeah, let me try that. I think it's going to be, should allow me to paste that much. Let's see, cumulative amount, copy. And if I go into the chat, there you go. Wait, no, I'm trying to send a direct message here. I'll send it to everyone. It actually doesn't let me paste that amount of text here. Let me just make sure I actually copied it. Copy, paste, no. So what I'll do is, if you have access to that quick document, what I'll do is I'll put it here. So formula, and then apparently you can do an @ code block, and then paste it there. Okay, so it should be in the quick doc. Do you have access to that quick doc?
Yep, it's there. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Man, modern Salesforce quick technology. It's amazing. Okay, so that is our cumulative report. Now, the second one I'm going to do, like I said, is that year-over-year type report. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this again. And instead of trying to modify this report, whenever we have these formulas and groupings and things like that, if you try to change it, sometimes Salesforce gives you these weird, like you'll get a big red error bar. So for this, I'm just going to create a new report instead of trying to modify that other one. So same thing here, we're going to do opportunities. I'm going to set it up similar to what we did on the previous one. So we'll go to filters. I'm going to, in this case, we're going to set this for all time. I'm going to put my same test filter on here. So test, so name, opportunity name is equal to test op, and we'll change that equals to a starts with. All right, so we have all of our test opportunities here. And what I'm going to do now is go to my outline, and we're going to set up the basic part of the report, right? So I'm going to change this. I'm going to remove all columns, and we're going to throw in the amount field. And then for the groupings, this is going to be a little bit different than what we did last time. So in this case, what I'm going to do is add the close date as our row group, and I'm going to group this by calendar. And actually, this is the part where I'm going to pretend like I've always known this, but I only learned this like 2 weeks ago. But if you come in here and your groupings, normally I would see all this stuff and I'm like, all right, I'm going to group by week or group by month. But you can actually go to the bottom of this thing, and there's a calendar, month, and year, right? So if you want to just grab what the actual month is, whether it's, no matter what the year is, it's just going to say it's January, February, March, whatever it is. So that's a pretty slick way that you can group. But then what that allows us to do, if we come over here into the other group, or group our columns, I'm going to select close date 2. So it's basically the close date, but it gives you 2 of them that you can work with. And in this case, I'm going to group this one by calendar year. All right, so already, if you didn't know that the month or that close date and close date 2, I mean, already that's actually pretty slick. That you can kind of see year over year next to each other by month there. So again, let me take a pause there. Anybody have any concerns getting this set up, just a basic setup of the report before we go into the next piece? All right. So now we want to see, okay, what is the difference? If we wanted to do the math to say, what is the difference between our amounts from January of this year versus our amount from January of last year? How do we create that formula? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here. We're going to add a summary formula. And in this case, I'm going to call this year over year. Well, yeah, I guess year over year month. All right, let's just say diff. All right. In this case, I'm going to keep it a number for now. And before we start doing like any kind of math, like, subtraction or anything like that, I just want to put the formula just to see if I'm getting the right previous value, right? So I always do these incrementally just to make sure that I'm getting the right thing that I wanted. So again, we'll go over here to our functions, and we're going to go to previous group val. I'm going to insert that in. And now for the display, before we actually fill out the formula, let's go over to that display. And we're going to again select specific groups. And we're going to say close date and then close date too. All right, so now for this, just like we did before, I'm going to delete that summary field. And I'm going to start typing in amount because we want the amount. For the grouping level, and again, this is the part where if you're not sure, that's okay. You can test something out and then go back and change it later. But for the grouping, if I'm looking over here at my groups on the left that are kind of grayed out, I want to grab the previous value from, and I think it's going to be close date 2. All right, so I'm going to start typing in close date, and I'm going to grab that close date 2. And then just like we did before, the increment is optional, but I'm just going to explicitly put it in there with a 1. So I'm going to grab whatever that previous value is, 1 over from the close date 2 column. So in theory, if I save this now, I should be able to see that value. Now, I want to get rid of stack summaries because I think this makes more sense when you take that off. But basically what we can see here is that it looks like we're getting the right thing. So for January of 2021, the year-over-year value that I just got with that function is grabbing this 118,000. And if we spot check somewhere in the middle, like July, it looks like, for this year, it's grabbing the correct previous value from July last year. So now it's just a matter of, adding the rest of our math, so to speak here, right? So if we want to know what the difference is, the difference is going to be the amount of this, this current field minus whatever the amount from the last year is. So we add that now. You can now see our year-over-year difference is we're down $3,000 here. If we look at July again, we can see that we're down, well, of course that one's the same, almost the same, 3,000, but you get the idea, right? So with that formula, now it lets you see this month how it compares to the same month from last year. And of course, you can expand this to do, a variety of other, important calculations that folks might like to see. So I'm going to grab this previous group val, formula that we have. But if I create a new one, let's just say that we want to do year over year. What did I say this was? Year over year percent diff, maybe. We'll make that a percent field. And then again, we'll update our groupings here. And then for the formula here, and this is where I have to dust off my my 6th grade math here, but I'm assuming that I should be able to do something like amount sum minus the previous group value, and that whole thing divided by the previous group value. And in theory, when I apply that, we should be able to see the percent difference year over year or month over month from the previous year. So, for January, it looks like the difference was $3,000, and that was a reflection of negative, 2.81%, from the previous year's value. All right, so let me pause there again. Any questions on this previous group val formula? Like I said, it's one of those that it seems like not a lot of folks use day to day, but once you get a hang of how the groupings work and all that stuff, it's actually pretty powerful. So any questions there? One final one that I'll throw here, if there's no questions. What if you wanted to see, and again, our values are so close together that this isn't going to be very impactful, I don't think, but what if you wanted to see for June of this year, how does that compare to the total of all of 2021, right? So I'm going to put those totals back on here. And you can see for 2021, our total revenue was $1.15 million, right? So what we can do, let's add another formula here. Now let's just say we want to compare this current value to the total for that entire year. So to do that, we're going to use a different formula this time. So we're going to say, we'll call this formula the percent of year, something like that. And again, we'll specify our groups first. So we're gonna say close date 2. And in this case, when we go to our functions, there's a different function here for summary called parent group val. All right, now again, just every time I use these things, I never try to do the full formula first. I always try to just do the one that I care about, the grouping, and then we'll add the rest of the math later. So in this case, very similar. We're going to do sum of the amount, and then the grouping level. In this case, I want the grouping level of close date, I believe. And again, I don't know. I believe. I don't know. That's why I always do it this way. So I'll add in the parent group val. Let's just see if it's getting the right value here. Expected 3. Okay, so I think we have to do the row and then the column. So I think we actually have to put, what is our row here? Row is close date. And then our column in this case is going to be close date 2. Okay, so again, in theory, let's see, percentage of year. Okay, so it's not actually giving me the value that I want here. This is actually giving me the same amount. So when we talk about parent group val, let's see, parent group val, it's the sum, close date 2. I wonder if I got these backwards here. Let's see, grouping level, I did row as close date and then column as close date 2. I mean, just for fun here, if I were to switch these around, I'm assuming it's going to yellow me here. Yeah, I don't think we can do it that way. Well, like I said, I am definitely not an expert on this. Let's see. Well, there's always the cheating option, right? So if we're going to cheat, and I go back to my previously developed report, let's see where I went wrong here. This is going to be year over year V2. And let's see what I got wrong here. So if we edit this and we look at our formula, previous group, nope, that's not the one I want. Maybe I didn't do it on the previous one. Okay. Let's discard this and just check my year over year, the first version of this that I did. Percentage a year. Yeah, so I did do it on this one. Okay. Well, let's see what our formula looks like. Yeah, I think what we need to do, if I go back to this percentage year, I think I don't want this to be date 2. I think that what this really needs to be is like, I think there's a grand summary. I forget what the word is. Grand total, summary grand total. I don't think it'll let me do that. Let's see, parent group val. Grand underscore summary. All right, so let's give that a try. So grand underscore summary. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so that is definitely not correct. Okay, so while I fumble through this and try to find out the correct version of this that we want, any questions before I keep clicking through this here? So close date 2. That's the one that I wanted. Okay, so again, I'll edit this in post-production so it looks like I knew exactly what I was doing here. But you can see that for this, for the row one, we actually want to grab the grand summary, not the individual value itself. All right, so now that we have that, you can see that that's actually given us now the total for that entire year. So now we can to get to the percentage of what this month is compared to the total of the, for the entire year. It should be a matter of just looking at the amount. So amount sum divided by the parent. And if we switch that over to a percent field, that should now give us, and they're all going to look very similar just because the values are very close together, but you get the idea here. So that 114,000 that we have is 9.3% of our total of 1.2 million. Right. So again, I've been doing this for a long time, but even now, like these parent group and previous group values, they always kind of trip me up as far as, what do you have to put in the different attributes. So, kind of starting a little bit at a time and then incrementally adding into your formulas. That's the model that works for me. So with that, I'm going to stop my share and just ask if there's any other questions. And while I'm asking for questions, I'll put that formula into the quick doc as well. But any questions or anything else that you might like to see or modifications of those reports? All right. So with that, then I think if there's any questions on this, I'm happy to field them. But otherwise, maybe I can open it up to any questions just in general. If anybody had anything that they brought to the table that they wanted to walk through, open floor now for anything you might want to cover. It's a good time to ask if I'm on mute, right? All right.
I'll pop on and ask a question for you.
Sure.
Okay, so when you're looking at all these formulas, and I've got my admin cert, and gone through some of the Trailhead, but how do you really learn how to do all these formulas? It's just practice?
Yeah, I think so. I think not just practice, but I think it's also trying to find practice that is relatable to you, right? So like what I find is when I go through the trailheads for a lot of this stuff, it doesn't really resonate because it's like their example, and it's like I do it and I get the module, but it's just like it doesn't really click. It's only when I actually use it as part of one of my examples does it really kind of stick in my head. And even in this case with the previous group and the parent group val, that still isn't stuck in my head. But I think it really just is, just trying to go through the examples, but something that like the data where it's kind of it resonates with you, where it will help you, stick with the the concept in your head. So that's what I would say. I would say practice, and if you have either in a production org or even on one of your dev orgs where you keep track of some data that just you care about, I think that's where I would say practice, to get familiar with the stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you can apply it to like food shopping, right? Like create records in Salesforce and make it relatable to you. And I think it comes a little bit easier. That stuff I'm seasoned and still blows me away. That's not something I don't think we do on a daily basis. I don't know, Bill, your feeling about that, but
yeah, I really don't do these on a daily basis. Now your idea about doing food shopping, that's when I start getting scared. Like, what percentage of our yearly budget was Dunkin' Donuts iced coffees? Like, I don't even want to see that value. So, yeah. Any other questions? Anything else that we can go through?
No question, but I feel like if you teach it too, it'll stick with you a little more. If you hop on like a user group and just teach people formulas or reports, that usually helps cement it because people ask questions and you're like, oh, that's a great question. Let me research it, or at least that's the way I learned is I have to be able to teach it to actually really know it. Otherwise, I'm just Googling.
Yeah, great point.
Thanks for teaching, Bill.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm hoping that, based on your what you just said, hopefully this will make it stick a little bit better. But I'm telling you, every time I have to do previous group val or parent group val, I have to Google the thing just to get it. And part of my frustration too is when you go into the formula editor here for the functions, you can see here for parent group val, we needed 3 distinct values to put in here, or attributes. But when you look at we look at it here, like it's not. I don't want to say it's not smart enough, but it's not smart enough to know that I have a row grouping and a column grouping. So it doesn't give you like that hint here. And even I'm pretty sure, and this is going to make a liar of me, but I'm pretty sure if I were to insert this, it only gives me 2. But I know that the way that I have my grouping, I'm going to need 3. So I think that's part of where I get tripped up as well. But that being said, I mean, you can always click on this help with this function. It takes you there. And I think it gives you a little bit more detail, to help figure out whether you need 2 or 3. And of course, when you try to save, it's going to give you the error message, and that'll give you an indication that you need 3, not 2. But yeah, when I clicked on that, I was kind of expecting it to take me to the actual one I need. Okay, parent. Is it not even on this page? That would be sad. Here we go, parent group val. There we go. Well, I said there we go, but I don't actually see it taking me where I need to go. All right. Since this call is being recorded for quality assurance and training purposes, I'm not going to knock the Salesforce help site, the new iteration of this, but I am sure that if I were to look down here, it would take me eventually to, there we go. Okay, yeah, so that's what I was talking about here. So if it's summary and joined, it's going to be two attributes you need. When it's on a matrix, or that's the kind of the old term for the, when you're grouped by columns and rows, you need three different attributes here. So the field, the row grouping, and the column grouping. And then if you didn't know, because I don't think it gives you a hint there, but the when you were to summarize by the grand total, that grand summary is that special keyword that you need, and that's what we had used in our formula as well. But yeah, so again, it never sticks. I always have to go back to the help and training, but I'm hoping eventually it'll stick. And by the time it sticks, they'll change it, and then it'll be something else I have to try to figure out. So yeah. Well, again, that's pretty much as far as like the what I wanted to share today. That's what I wanted to cover. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll hang out for another 15 minutes. But otherwise, I really appreciate you guys listening and going through this.